Welcome to Tasmania. This video travels in an anti-clockwise direction around the island. It takes the viewpoint of a typical tourist who spends 2 weeks visiting most of Tasmania's scenic and historic regions. The Able Tasman is a passenger vehicle and freight ferry taking about 14 hours to travel from the mainland. Along with the Sea Cat catamaran, it provides an important link across Bass Strait. For many years, Devonport has been known as the gateway to Tasmania, and this is where our journey begins. Devonport is a tourism-oriented city with a population of more than 26,000 people. It offers full accommodation and visitor facilities, and has some of Tasmania's best attractions within easy distance. Devonport boasts some good restaurants specialising in seafood and a shopping centre reflecting Tasmania's easy pace. A good place to saunter through souvenir galleries and then stroll down to have lunch on the beach. Devonport's foreshore has a large recreation area, enabling adults to unwind while children discover Tasmania offers more than scenery and convict buildings. As well as a place to put your feet up and watch the tide come in, Devonport offers you all the tourist information needed for an enjoyable holiday. The Forth Valley Lookout provides an excellent view of typical northwest coast farmland, where some of Australia's best dairy and vegetable produce is grown and exported. A short drive from Forth is Penguin, a small town named after the fairy penguins which are still evident in rookeries along the coast. You'll discover Penguin's Beach has the biggest penguin in Australia and is ideal for the smallest children. Stanley's most famous feature is the Nut. Stanley is a farming and fishing town which the 20th century seems to have passed by. The imprint of pioneers can be seen throughout the town. It would be easy to imagine the ghosts of these people still herding their sheep down the main street. Stanley is over 150 years old. A number of its restored buildings are open for inspection. Conducted tours of the historic village commence at the old commercial inn. Climbing steeply out of the 1800s is a chairlift, taking people almost to the top of the Nut, the core of an ancient volcano. The wind blowing through your hair from the west carries some of the cleanest air in the world, and the views are spectacular. Stanley has holiday units, hotel and colonial accommodation, and nearby host farms as well as a caravan park which has excellent facilities and a friendly atmosphere. Six kilometres from Stanley is Highfield, which was completed by the Van Diemen's Land Company in 1835. The company was formed in London to cultivate land and rear well-bred flocks of sheep. Highfield is still undergoing restoration, and workmen on the site have said the main homestead has a ghost which haunts the ongoing restoration. A darker memory from the past surrounds the Van Diemen's Land Company, which badly treated the local Aborigines who fought for their tribal land. Many Aborigines and Europeans were killed. About 40 kilometres from Stanley is Dip Falls, a delightful double waterfall plunging into thick rainforest. Steps provide easy access to the base of the falls. There is a barbecue area, covered shelters and amenities at the falls. Nearby, several huge eucalypts have survived the foresters of the past. These trees were apparently too big to transport to the mills. The area is reached from Montemana or Black River on the Bass Highway. The Black River picnic area is also a popular spot. Tasmania's west coast water is now bottled and exported overseas. The Dip Falls water is from the same rainfall which was packaged and later consumed by Olympic athletes at the Seoul Olympics. Cup your hands and taste what the first explorers and prospectors must have experienced. The falls in this picture were filmed in the late afternoon with low light. Slightly unusual colour effects were captured. The Murchison Highway on the west coast winds through some of the most beautiful temperate rainforest in the world. Often these forests are covered in a light fall of snow, which creates picture postcard scenes for hundreds of kilometres. The highway travels into the Helier Gorge, where there is a picnic area right by the river. A short detour off the Murchison Highway is the magnificent Cradle Mountain Lake St Clair National Park, which belongs to Tasmania's World Heritage Area. The impressively jagged spires of Cradle Mountain are columns of lava basalt rock formed by volcanic action. The lakes in the park were formed much later by glaciers. Lake St Clair, known as Leowolina by the Aborigines, is one of many spectacular lakes formed by the last ice age. In the spring, the area around Lake St Clair blossoms with large red waratahs, pink and white heaths, butterfly irises, small orchids and yellow wattles. Perhaps the most interesting tree in the park is the Antarctic beech. It's also found in South America and New Zealand and suggests these landmasses were all connected to Antarctica. The park is the home of the Bennets and Rufus wallabies, both unique Tasmanian varieties. The spectacular walk between Cradle Mountain and Lake St Clair is world famous, and numerous tracks lead to unforgettable climbing areas. Lake McIntosh, near the old mining town of Tulla, is one of the many lakes in Tasmania created by dams built for the generation of hydroelectricity. The lake is ideal for boating and fishing. Strahan on Macquarie Harbour is the major port on the west coast of Tasmania. The wharves once handled freight to and from the Queenstown mines, as well as shipments of timber. Crayfish and tourist boats now use the port. In 1815, the explorer James Kelly was the first European to enter Macquarie Harbour. By 1821, a convict settlement had been established on Sarah Island in the harbour. This was featured in the story For the Term of His Natural Life. The West Coast has a long and rich maritime heritage, which continues through to this day. From Strahan, launch trips can be made up the Gordon River, which flows through spectacular mountain country. Today, it's easy to leave Macquarie Harbour, but in 1834, it wasn't so simple. Convicts seized the brig Frederick and escaped to South America. Later, they were captured and condemned to death. For today's visitors, the life at Strahan is a little more easygoing. Queenstown is the most famous mining town in Tasmania. Its prosperity grew from the discovery of gold in 1883. Since then, the Queenstown mines have produced millions of tons of copper and silver, as well as the gold. Queenstown has many points of interest for the tourist and a good range of accommodation. The Galley Museum has many exhibits featuring the history of mining and Queenstown's flourishing past. The mountains around Queenstown were originally covered by rainforest and dense undergrowth, but after copper smelters began operating late in the 1800s, the timber was cut for fuel and sulphur fumes killed the remaining vegetation. Mount Lyell above Queenstown is now producing ore using modern mining techniques, and the stark moonscape remains as a harsh reminder of days when the environment was not an issue in perhaps Australia's most environmentally conscious state. After heavy rain washed away the topsoil, it uncovered rocks displaying a myriad of colours. Chrome, yellow, purple and pink rocks are often picked up on the roadside by tourists wanting a souvenir of their West Coast trip. Gormanston near Queenstown is the original mining settlement. 2 kilometres further along the Lyell Highway is the abandoned mining town of Linda. The entire Queenstown region reflects the faded glory of old mining days, and the silhouettes of long-forgotten miners could be imagined walking from the adits of abandoned ore bodies. The Mountfield National Park has well-made roads, picnic areas and accommodation at its entrance, including a youth hostel not far from Russell Falls. The park has many scenic attractions and ski fields. A bitumen path to the base of Russell Falls provides easy access for wheelchairs and the elderly. There is a thriving population of native animals and birds in the park, and even the shy Tasmanian devil is occasionally sighted on walking tracks. About 20% of Tasmania's plant species and many of its birds and animals are unique to the island, making it a place of unexpected discovery for both local and international tourists. The moss and lichen-covered world of the island's forests conjure up imaginary realms where children and adults alike can dream of magic faraway trees or the prehistoric times in which our ancestors may have lived. Few areas on Earth offer such pristine, untouched wilderness. Tourism is now one of Tasmania's largest industries, and a great deal of effort has been put into providing appropriate roads, camping areas, accommodation, signposts and information centres. The Mountfield camping area has powered sites, amenities including showers and washing facilities, and plenty of space for a game of test cricket between the trees. The nighttime entertainment at the camping ground is a variety performance by a large cast of characters. The first act is usually performed by the wallabies, who are later followed by possums, bandicoots and the colourful Tasmanian tiger cat. Advanced bookings are not required and shows are held all year round. But the stars, like most stars, don't perform for peanuts. The ideal food is carrot or other vegetables. A cameo performance by the spotted Tasmanian tiger cat is unforgettable and can't be seen anywhere else on Earth. Usually, the possums try to steal the show with their weight of numbers. Bread or other soft food should not be fed to wallabies or possums, as it affects their mouth and gums. The salmon ponds at Plenty have been developed as a major visitor attraction. Atlantic salmon is now a prize export from Tasmania, which is a leader in the field of aquaculture. The first brown and rainbow trout in the southern hemisphere were also successfully raised at the Plenty Fish Farm in 1864. Many of the lakes in Tasmania's highlands have been stocked with trout and encourage anglers from around the world to try their luck. In other Tasmanian fish farms, a native white-fleshed saltwater fish, the striped trumpeter, is now being researched for farming. It has wide acceptance and is sought by the Japanese sashimi market. At the Plenty Fish Farm, tourists are able to feed the fish and perhaps later contemplate the fish surrounded by freshly cooked vegetables. The trout and salmon ponds are surrounded by well-kept gardens planted with many exotic trees from around the world. A tea room, kiosk and spacious lawns make this an ideal spot for a family picnic. The fish farm is only 50 kilometres from our tour's next stop, the capital city of Hobart. The Mount Nelson tea rooms provide a good view of Hobart, a beautiful harbour city on the banks of the Derwent River. Founded in 1804, Hobart is Australia's second oldest city, which retains a colonial charm which Sydney lost many years ago. Greater Hobart has a population of 180,000. It's the home of Australia's first casino and is a very popular convention destination with international standard hotels and a large entertainment centre. Historically, Hobart is of enormous interest. More than 90 of its buildings have National Trust classification. Last century, Hobart was a whaling port, and its history has always been closely linked with the sea. Tourists are recommended to take a harbour cruise and saunter through the maritime exhibits at the Dockside Museum. The Sydney to Hobart yacht race is Australia's most famous. It finishes in Hobart, where thousands of locals, along with visiting sailing crews, celebrate the new year. St David's Cathedral, in the heart of the city, is a good example of the craftsmanship that went into constructing many of Hobart's colonial churches. It is hard to imagine the harsh conditions under which some convict-built landmarks must have been constructed. The Royal Tasmanian Botanical Gardens, situated only 2 kilometres from the city centre, contain a great many features, both historical and botanical. A magnificent conservatory where floral displays are changed 4 times a year is a must for any visitor. A restaurant set among trees near the lily pond caters for luncheons and light refreshments. An easy access garden has been made for the disabled, and there are many other outstanding features, including various fountains. The southernmost destination on our tour is Hastings and its caves. On the way to the caves, good meals and snacks can be bought at the restaurant near the thermal pool. The pool is naturally heated by hot springs which rise from deep underground. The temperature of the water is usually about 25 degrees Celsius and is ideal for swimming. Barbecue and other facilities have been built around the pool in a fern glade surrounded by dense rainforest. There are many well-constructed walking paths leading from the pool, a perfect area for the family to explore the rainforest without needing backpacks, army boots and a compass. The Hastings Caves were discovered by timbermen in 1917 and are a little easier to get to now. The caves are unique examples of dolomite limestone caves and are regarded as some of the most beautiful in the country. The centerpiece of the major cave is a large, well-illuminated cavern. Surprisingly, during filming, the cameraman did not feel the cold. The tour guide said the caves were always warmer than people expected. A fairy tale world of stalactites, stalagmites, and intricate limestone sculptures formed over thousands of years surrounds the tourist, with a gallery of strange shapes, animals, and mythical figures. Tasmania retains more of its colonial heritage than any other Australian state. Nowhere is this more evident than the charming old world village of Richmond, near Hobart. Richmond's treasures include Australia's oldest bridge, Australia's oldest Catholic church, and a perfectly preserved colonial jail. The jail held some colourful prisoners, such as the bushranger Martin Cash and the famous Isaac Solomons, a London brothel keeper and swindler on whom Charles Dickens is said to have based the character Fagin in Oliver Twist. Richmond's centrepiece is the magnificent bridge, built by convict labour from 1823 to 1825. The Freestone Bridge was built from local stone quarried at Butcher's Hill. St John's Roman Catholic Church is the oldest Catholic church in Australia. In 1830, the first convicts arrived at Port Arthur by ship. For many, it was their second last boat ride. This will become evident as the story unfolds. For the term of your natural life was a sentence heard by thousands of English and Irish offenders from the British Isles as they stood condemned in the docks. It is said that many chose death rather than being transported to the southern edge of the world. It was well nigh impossible to escape from Port Arthur, which is almost totally surrounded by water. The narrow strip of land connecting the settlement to the mainland of Tasmania was patrolled by dogs and guards. Cell walls were almost 1 metre thick. and the prospect of survival in an unknown wilderness beyond European settlement was perhaps the greatest deterrent for escape. Welcome to the model prison. Silence. Your name becomes a number. You wear a head mask. Faces are never seen. Warders communicate by hand signals. Slippers are worn to deaden the sound. Speech is forbidden. Bread and water is served. God is preached in a chapel of solitary confinement. Repent, reflect on your sins, contemplate the life you could have led. One of the few ways to escape Port Arthur was by dying. Over 1,700 souls made their last boat trip to the Isle of the Dead. Corpses were covered with lime. Several were buried in the one pit. Many had no headstones. It was a peaceful place, the Isle of the Dead. The narrow strip of land connecting Port Arthur to the Forestier Peninsula is known as Eagle Hawk Neck. This was patrolled by guards and dogs before 1877. Today, it is one of several remarkable natural tourist attractions. Eagle Hawk Neck is notable for its unique coastal formations. The tessellated pavement is below the hotel. Nearby is the Blowhole, Devil's Kitchen, and Tasman Arch. All are enormous formations which could be seen as the playground of giants. At the northern end of the Freycinet Peninsula is Coles Bay. The bay and the Freycinet National Park are dominated by jagged pink granite peaks with dramatic cliffs dropping sheer to the sea. Bushwalking is one of the most popular pursuits on an island like Tasmania, with many different geographical and botanical regions. Coles Bay on the east coast has a very moderate climate and long, sparkling summers. A 15-minute walk from the car park gives people an excellent view over Wineglass Bay. There may be no goannas, pythons or crocodiles in Tasmania, but there are plenty of wallabies. Many Tasmanians are reliant on tourism for their livelihood, and it seems the wallabies are catching on. They appear from the bush when tourists with food arrive, and are so hospitable, perhaps they should be on the payroll of Tourism Tasmania. Strange humans with cameras are even greeted by Mum with her latest Joey, What a strange world we're born into, perhaps the Joey thinks, while Mum hopes the cameraman comes back again with his crunchy cheddar biscuits. Some things are worth getting your picture taken for. Bicheno is one of Tasmania's most popular holiday resorts, combining the mild east coast climate, sparkling ocean beaches, good accommodation and a number of interesting visitor attractions. The town's long and colourful history dates back to the days when sealers and whalers used the harbour for shelter. The restored Ketch Enterprise can be found on the foreshore. Near the Ketch is the Sea Life Centre, displaying live crayfish, eels, seahorses, scalefish and many other forms of sea life. The centre has a restaurant specialising in fresh crayfish. Bicheno is an important fishing centre, being home port for many crayfishing and abalone boats. One coastal feature is the well-known blowhole. On Diamond Island, which is accessible at low tide, fairy penguins can be seen. Bicheno has many other attractions well worth a visit. Scamander is another town on Tasmania's Sunshine Coast. The surf rolls in long crescent-shaped beaches, but unlike the Gulf Coast, there are not crowded waves of tourists flowing from high-rise buildings. A surf carnival is held at Scamander once a year, and low-rise tourist facilities are continuing to be developed. St Helens is the largest town on the east coast. Its economy is based on fishing, timber and in particular tourism. The town is situated on the shores of Georges Bay, a 120 square kilometre expanse of sheltered water. Some tourists simply like to sit around and take in the fresh ocean air, while others are a little more active, windsurfing across the bay. St Helens offers a range of accommodation and has commercial and recreational facilities varying from cycle hire to deep-sea fishing charters. The magnificent view from St Helens Point looks out over the Tasman Sea. All along the coast, both the views and surf are excellent. Not far from St Helens is Binnalong Bay on the southern edge of the Bay of Fires, which extends northward for almost 50 kilometres to Eddystone Point and the Mount William National Park. There are no towns on this part of the coast. Only a few beach shacks are scattered through bush on the foreshore. The beaches and inland forests are much like they were when white settlers first arrived. Kilometres from the small township of Pyangana are the St Columbia Falls. Accommodation and meals are available at the St Columbia Falls Hotel, known by the locals as the Pub in the Paddock. The pub is wheelchair accessible and has 7 inexpensive rooms. Entertainment is provided by the local farmers, foresters and labourers in the bar. The falls during winter are said to be the wildest zigzag falls in Tasmania. The water drops almost 100 metres to the valley floor. Rivers in the valley are popular with trout fishermen. Georgetown is a flourishing commercial centre at the mouth of the Tamar River. It has recently become the Tasmanian berth for the Tasmanian-built Sea Cat catamaran. The Tamar River was discovered in 1798 by Matthew Flinders and George Bass when they circumnavigated Tasmania and proved the existence of Bass Strait. The first permanent settlement at Georgetown was established in 1811 and named in honour of King George III of England. The original pilot station has been transformed into a very interesting maritime museum. Many relics from early shipwrecks, including logbooks, are on display. Across the road from the museum is the ever-present colonial church, built in 1875. There are a large number of well-established private gardens throughout the Tamar Valley, which has an ideal climate. The historic Low Head Lighthouse is one of the many beautifully preserved buildings along the Tamar. The valley is well known for its orchards, vineyards and superb views. It's perhaps one of the most idyllic places in Australia. Its southern hemisphere latitude compares with the latitude of Madrid and Naples in Europe. The Sea Cat Tasmania is one of several giant catamarans designed and built in Australia. Not only does it bring visitors to Tasmania, it also brings international recognition to the Tasmanian manufacturer. The sister catamaran to Sea Cat Tasmania, Hobart, Great Britain, made a record-breaking transatlantic crossing in June 1990. The revolutionary wave-piercing Sea Cat is a seagoing 747 carrying both cars and passengers in style. It will play an important role in bringing the hidden treasures of Tasmania a little closer to the rest of the world. In 1869, gold was discovered at Beaconsfield, across the river from Georgetown. Beaconsfield thrived at the beginning of this century. The ruins of brick buildings with large Romanesque arches, erected at the pithead of the Tasmanian gold mine, still dominate the town. The Grub Shaft Museum displays an extensive collection of artefacts and history donated by local residents. Today, Beaconsfield is a small rural town with only distant memories of gold fever. The Grub Shaft Museum is open Tuesday to Sunday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is a fine regional museum with many interesting exhibits and photographs. Launceston is the second largest city in Tasmania. It is situated at the confluence of the South and North Esk rivers, where they flow into the Tamar River. The city nestles in the Tamar Valley and is surrounded by mountains which are often snow-capped in winter. The City Mall is one of several stylish pedestrian shopping areas, which are lined with both department stores and friendly boutiques and coffee shops. Launceston is one of the finest provincial shopping centres in Australia. The city has many long-established gardens and fine examples of well-maintained Victorian and Georgian buildings. Launceston was founded in 1805 and is named after the old township of Launceston in Cornwall, England. It was proclaimed a city in 1888. The town grew rapidly in the 1800s and was the place from which Batman and Fawkner sailed to establish Melbourne, the Victorian state capital. Launceston once had its own stock exchange. Stately buildings such as the Albert Hall and the Queen Victoria Museum were all built from the prosperity of the last century. Launceston is not only a city of parks, but also a city of churches. Several were simply and elegantly built using the labour of convicts or emancipated craftsmen. The Central Post Office is a landmark with its clock tower. The prominence of such buildings gives Launceston a unique atmosphere. The beautiful and ever-changing city park is in the very heart of the city. One of the park's many attractions is the marquee monkey. The monkeys are a gift from Launceston's sister city, Ikeda, in Japan. Since their introduction to the park, they have increased significantly in number. Only a narrow moat separates ambling visitors from the unconcerned monkeys living in a world of their own. Boat rides can be taken down the Tamar River. Museums, art galleries and craft shops are spread throughout the city. Every week there are venues open for contemporary music, classical music, live theatre and art exhibitions. Old flour mills and other historic buildings classified by the National Trust have been converted into spaces for art and performances. Only a few minutes' walk from the central city is the Cataract Gorge. Crossing the gorge is the longest single-span chairlift in the world. The earliest recorded visit to the gorge was made in 1804 by William Collins in the ship Lady Nelson. He wrote this in his journal. Upon approaching the entrance, I saw a large fall of water over rocks. The beauty of the scene is probably not surpassed in the world. In 1904, a suspension bridge was constructed across the South Esk River with its surging waters flowing through the gorge. Further up the river, a hydro power station was completed in 1895, making Launceston the first city in the Southern Hemisphere to be lit by hydroelectricity. Justice to the parks, gardens and walkways in the gorge cannot be done with a camera. The Cliff Ground restaurant caters for visitors 7 days a week. Under 1 hour's drive from Launceston is the Poatina hydroelectric power station. 6 turbines are located deep underground and have a capacity to generate 300,000 kilowatts. Poatina is the Aboriginal word for cavern, a very appropriate name for this power development, commissioned in 1964. Picnic and barbecue facilities and amenities are well provided for in the power station grounds. Regular guided tours take visitors underground. Take a ride toward the centre of the earth, where humming turbines generate much of northern Tasmania's electricity. Poatina is the most economical power station in the southern hemisphere. 9,100 litres of water pass through each turbine nozzle in only 1 second. The weight of water at each turbine is 180,000 tonnes. If you're interested, the guide will give you more information. Well, it's the long, steep ride back to the surface, where the tour guide has promised the film crew a nice cup of hot hydro-boiled tea. The crew just hopes the minibus has enough power to reach the top. The Poatina Power Station is only a short detour up the Midlands Highway and is well worth a visit. Campbelltown is the centre of a district noted for fine merino wool production. The settlement was established in 1811 by Governor Macquarie and named after his second wife, Elizabeth Campbell. The first high-grade wool was exported in 1822 and brought 7 pennies per pound on the London market. The town is of considerable historic interest. Buildings of importance include several churches, the Campbelltown Inn, Powell's Hotel, the Grange, the Fox Hunter's Return, and the Old Brewery. Who was Harold Gatty? Somebody from Campbelltown could tell you. He was born in the town and became the first navigator to fly around the world with Wiley Post in 1931. Churches are a major feature in every large and small Tasmanian town. Most were built many years ago and are a reflection of the importance of religion in colonial times. Priests and ministers played a significant role in the everyday lives of European immigrants half a world away from their birthplace. Ross is an unhurried town that has been bypassed by our modern age. It represents one of the great treasures of Australia's colonial architectural heritage. The town offers a variety of attractions and facilities with antique shops, tea rooms, a nursery, a craft shop, a military museum, the Tasmanian Wool Centre, and both colonial and country accommodation. On the first Saturday in November, Ross moves into the 20th century to stage the Ross Rodeo, which attracts riders from all over Australia. After the crowds have disappeared, the locals go back to their local bar. Warm wood fires, the sound of rain on iron roofs, cricket matches, and the odd chat with a passing tourist. One dominant feature of Ross is its bridge, built by convict labour and opened in 1836, and still being used by vehicle traffic today. Panoramic views of the Midlands can be obtained from several vantage points in Tasmania's highlands. The Great Lake is a magnificent lake formed by glaciation. It's over 1 kilometre above sea level and has been stocked with trout. The Central Plateau is a protected natural wonderland for bushwalking, fishing, boating and camping. The lake is 16 kilometres long and easily accessible. Only a short drive north from the Great Lake is Liffey Falls, sadly the second last stop on our journey around Tasmania. A good place though to rest and begin to reflect on our travels. The kids are getting tired, experiences are now memories, noses are sunburned, the windscreen needs a good clean, clothes need a laundromat, the road map is beginning to tear along its creases, the glove box is filled with brochures, broken sunglasses and food wrappers. It's time to put your feet up and soak in the sounds of rippling water. Some visitors to our island state end up staying permanently. Koalas are not natural to Tasmania, but those introduced to the Mole Creek Wildlife Park have made themselves right at home. They are now successfully breeding at the park.
What's all the fuss about? Who's that bloke with the camera? Cripes, are my feet that interesting?
A close relation of the koala is the wombat, but instead of living in the trees, wombats burrow underground. Even though koalas and wombats could be seen as cousins in the marsupial family, koalas like to be left alone, whereas wombats seem to enjoy the company of people. It appears that takeaway food has even reached the bush. These modern, upwardly mobile wallabies have quickly become accustomed to takeaway bush tucker. Dial a backpacker. These people bring food right to your doorstep with a minimum of fuss. The bush telegraph works well too. Even the lizards are catching on to the home-delivered service.
Hello? What's this? Who's that trying to steal the show? A swan parading for the camera? Show off. I think I'd better check things out. I'm a member of Actors Equity, you know, mate. What's this? A Sony Nest box? Who's that in charge around here, love? Don't suppose this plug is very important? What if I pull the plug?
The Tasmanian devil is famous for two reasons. It's one of the characters on the Bugs Bunny show, and it's also unique to Tasmania. The devil is a carnivorous marsupial that feeds on any type of meat. In the bush, it eats wallabies, rats, birds, lizards, snakes, possums, along with cats, rabbits, and any other carrion. The devil has strong jaws and eats its prey whole, including the skin and bones. But it can be a little civilised, taking time to have a bath. One of the great attractions at the park is the handling of young devils. Visitors have the opportunity to pat and handle baby devils under the watchful eye of a park supervisor. The park has many animals and birds unique to Tasmania, an island which is a Noah's Ark for many species that occur nowhere else on Earth.
Imagine an island which for most of the year has the greenness of England, tall temperate rainforests, wild rivers and waterfalls, 1,000 clear highland lakes mirroring rugged mountain peaks, valleys of beech and tree fern, quiet crescent beaches and wave-swept coastlines, pristine wilderness and palatial caves. Imagine an island with smoke gently rising from chimneys on mist-filled mornings, a patchwork of orchards and vegetable gardens stretching over coastal plains, quiet colonial towns with the bells of churches chiming on Sunday morning. Imagine an island of vineyards, fine seafood, waterfront markets, and cities with a history that has not been forgotten. This is Tasmania.